I'll briefly tell you my background. So I was a wrench. I got out of wrenching, sold Snap-on tools for 5 years. Very disenchanted with with Snap-on. I went back to wrenching for a client who bought tools from me. And one day I was at my toolbox and I was complaining about our service advisor at the shop, and the boss was there. And next morning I walked in. He says, you really gave me some ideas, some thought, kept me up all night." And I said, "Good." He said, "So we're going to make a change." And he said, "You're going to be the service writer today." So I kind of complained my way into service writing. I went, did it, because this is just the way I am. And I pretty quickly realized I didn't know what I was doing. Right? I was a technician. Talking to people is not a problem, but the skill set to be a good service writer I lacked. So I started looking for training, and I met Jim Hunt, the founder of ESI,
Okay.
at a trade show. And we hit it off because he was, very down to earth. He wasn't arrogant. And I went back and told the boss, guy on the shop, we need to go to these classes. So we went to these classes, and Jim and I became friends. He gave me a chance to do some presentation work. And he got ill. And so we agreed upon a 7-year plan for me to buy the company from him. 5 years into the plan, he passed away.
Ooh.
So I worked for his widow for 2 years. And then at the 7-year mark, I took the company over. And that was 30 years ago.
I do remember from one of the your keynotes. It was either your keynote or one of your classes I was in that you had mentioned that, hey, I'll come and service right for you just to show you it can be done.
Right. Well, that's what I did when I first went to work for ESI. I did two things. We had a client that owned some gas stations and he wanted more. So Jim Hunt and him, the owner, would negotiate a new station and they'd buy it. And on the day escrow closed, I would go in and I would fire all the employees, hire the ones back that we wanted, and then I'd take the station into 24 hours a day, put a C store in it, and get the back room up and running and hire the people necessary. And then I'd move to the next station. And I did that for 5 stations. And then the owner realized how much work he really had. So when he stopped buying gas stations, I actually, for 5 years, I did temporary service writing. So for example, if you went on vacation and maybe you didn't have a service advisor, you could hire me to come write service in your shop for a week. So for 5 years, pretty much every week, I wrote service in a different repair shop. And there were some weeks that I'd write service in a different shop every day.
Ooh.
So let's say that maybe you had something your kids were doing. You had a doctor's appointment. You'd hire me to come in for the day, and the next day I'd go to this guy. And I ran a couple shops where the guy went to small claims court. So in the 5 years I did that, I literally worked in hundreds of repair shops. And I'll be honest with you, Brett, that was the best job.
Yeah, you got to see the gambit of the small, the good, the bad, the ugly of the industry.
And it's a challenge because think about this: if I came into your shop and you're not there, I had to get your employees to work for me and work hard for me because you're paying me a lot of money to be there, right?
Yep.
I got to learn your computer system, and there's none the same. Not everybody has the same one. And then I had to make your customers comfortable enough to buy from me. So that's why I say I got a PhD in customer service, because I learned how to get these people to buy from me. I learned how to get your employees to work sometimes harder for me than they will for you. And I had to perform, otherwise I would never be hired again. And after the first year of doing that, I was booked out a couple of years in advance for some dates, like summertime when people want to go on vacations. And literally, I could have worked every single day. I worked almost every Christmas Eve, almost every Thanksgiving Eve, because the owners wanted to go away with their families.
Right.
So they'd hire me, the week of Christmas. I almost always was out of town working. And literally every Friday night I got on a plane, every Sunday night I got on a plane and flew someplace, went to work on Monday morning at a shop, flew home on Friday night, and started the whole thing over. And this was all over North America.
Wow. Wow. I can tell the industry in and out. Like I said, the good, bad, the ugly.
Yep.
So, you got into ESI, the Educational Seminars Institute.
Correct.
And now you're teaching us shop owners how to do this, what you've been doing for years.
Right. So when Jim passed away, my job changed. I couldn't do the temp service writing anymore because I was doing all of the development of classes, the teaching of classes, and excuse me, coaching people. And eventually, I when I completed the purchase of the business, then I hired some people to come in and work for me. So right now we have 3 or 4 people that do coaching and a couple that do training for us.
So speaking of training, you're coming into Tools
Yes.
October 20th to the 22nd, and we're going to be at the Kalahari Resort in the Poconos, and you've been there before.
Yes, sir.
And what do you think? What do you think of the venue that we have?
I actually like the venue, except the craziness of all the kids. Um, and I have two kids grown. I have 2 grandchildren. It's not the kids; it's just the chaos that goes with having that many kids in one building.
Yep.
And I remember the first time I went, I got a soda and I sat in a chair across from the elevators and watched this one guy try to get on an elevator for almost an hour.
Oh,
The door would
gotta
open
walk
and all
the
these
steps.
kids would rush by him and fill the elevator up. And he just got take a step back, wait for the next one. And then the parents would be pushing him out of the way because they had, luggage carts and balloons and it was better than TV, you know. And I drank my soda and I laughed. I talked with him a little bit. It's a great venue. I mean, lots of room, lots of interesting things, good restaurants. Um, you just got to be a little bit patient because at night the restaurants do get a little busy with the kids and families and stuff. But
And last year we ran into there's a big judo contest going on,
right,
and guess what? It's the same weekend that we're there again this year.
I actually had no problems with those kids because they're all a little older and they were there for a purpose. And
Yeah,
I think the martial arts teach them a little different discipline.
yeah. You don't want to make them mad; they'll just beat you up.
No, no. Um, they were great. I talked to a few of them, being in the hallways and stuff. Um, it's the kids going to the water park and running around and
Yeah,
wet, and the floor being slippery and stuff. But
yeah.
again, it's all if you have patience. If you have grandkids, it's no big deal because you're kind of used to it.
And that's why I think that's why we looked at this venue a couple years ago, because to try and bring your family, like you're a prime example. Traveled weekly, daily, and
Right,
month. You were rarely home, so this is a chance to bring your family, let them enjoy while you're getting trained, networking, and everything, and get to mingle with some vendors. So
right,
we do have a jam packed. We got 30 seminars that we got, and you're doing 2 of those seminars, one on Friday afternoon and one Sunday morning.
correct.
And what's the first one that they can look into, and tell us a little bit about what that class is going to entail to try and get people to come in that class.
Well, I think this is a great place to talk about that because I'm sure you've heard it from a lot of shop owners go, I can't afford. I can't afford to take the time. I can't afford the cost of going there. So the class I'm doing, I think you said it was Friday. It's
Yep.
called Profit Structuring and Business Analysis. So it's kind of interesting. If you follow any of the Facebook groups for auto repair or any of the forums, very common question is how much should I charge per hour? How much should I pay my technicians?
What should my shop
That's
rate be? I'll
right.
call it down the street and see what theirs is.
We call that setting your hourly rate by WAG, wild ass guess. And what we're going to talk about here is, first of all, the tools that you have, which is a P&L. We're going to teach you how to read it properly. And to be honest with you, about 98% of all the P&Ls that I look at are wrong, drastically wrong. So I'm going to show you why they're wrong and how to prevent you from making really poor financial decisions. I'll share with you an example. I have a shop. He calls me up and says, hey, Malin, I just want to let you know my net profit for the last 10 months on average per month is $12,000. And I said, that's great. 12 grand a month profit, net profit. And he goes, yeah, but I got a question for you. And I said, okay. He goes, if I made $12,000 for 10 months profit, shouldn't I have $120,000 in the bank? And I said, well, in theory, yes. He goes, well, I don't, and I don't understand why. So I actually went to this guy's shop and sat down because he couldn't answer my questions. And I went through his checkbook and I found $10,000 of bills he was paying that weren't being accounted for on his P&L
Ooh.
because his accountant was following what we call GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, right? It's their rules for accounting. So he was making decisions thinking he was making $12,000 a month when what he was making was $2,000 a month. So when I explained to him, I said, do you have 20 grand in the bank? He goes, I do. I said, so we need to fix your P&L to where it gives you factual information. But
Right.
he didn't know because he didn't study the P&L and he didn't understand what GAAP was. So we're going to talk about GAAP. We're going to talk about how the P&L is wrong. Part of the workbook is actually going to be a sample P&L with explanations of what goes in categories because stuff gets miscategorized all the time. And then we're going to talk about, and I'll actually show them how to set their hourly rate based on their cost of doing business. You know, people talk about it, you know, the nut. How much does it cost you every day to keep your door open? So let's say that it costs you $20,000 to pay all your bills. That's not technician wages, and that's not parts purchases.
Yeah, because that
That's,
goes up the cost of goods. That comes off the gross.
well, if the P&L is done right. But I see stuff in cost of goods that doesn't belong there. But here's the mistake people make is they say, well, if I need 20 grand to stay open and I'm doing 30 grand, I should have $10,000, right? No, because it's really, you need to have $20,000 in gross profit after you paid your technicians, your cost of goods sold. So if that's not right, everything else after that's wrong. So we're going to spend a lot of time on that. Then I'll show you how to do all the math. And then we're going to talk about, I call gross sales the liar's number, right? When you get a bunch of shop owners together, everybody asks, well, hey, Brett, what'd you do in gross sales? And you could say anything you want because you can't necessarily, don't have to prove it, right?
You're right.
Right. So it's kind of the bragging number.
I caught the fish that was this big.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk about gross profit, what it is, why it's so important to us. We're going to talk about why the P&L is right. And then we're going to talk about what it costs you to keep your shop open, how many hours you have to bill, what your hourly rate needs to be. And then, of course, we're going to get to the really important number that nobody talks about, and that's your effective or true labor rate. So if you charge $200 an hour and you're 50% productive, you're only charging $100 an hour, right?
You're right. Yep. I'm
And
still
if
trying to get that effective labor rate to match.
right, so we're going to talk about why that is. And let's say that we do all the math and it says your hourly rate needs to be $120 an hour. You're charging $200 an hour, so you think I'm good, right? But your effective labor rate's 100. So every hour you bill, you're actually losing $20. And that's
Yep.
why there's no net profit. So we're gonna go through that whole, well, how the P&L is, how it works, what's important about it. Then we're going to talk about how to actually set your hourly rate. And if anybody wants to bring their P&L for
Yeah,
either
you wanted 3 month statements to bring so they have something factual numbers to help.
right, a minimum of 3 months, 3, 6, 9, 12, whatever they're comfortable with. And they don't need to share their numbers with anybody else in class. The workbook that I'm bringing has a little fill in the blank. So what's on the screen that they're going to see has a blank so they can write their numbers in. It has all the math right there. But even better, and this is the bonus for coming to the event, I will give you the spreadsheet that I use to do all of these calculations.
That's great. That's a perk.
So everybody that's there, all I ask you to do is send me your email address, send me an email, and I'll just reply to that email, and you'll get the spreadsheet. Plus, because it's tools, because I'm supporting the association, you fill that worksheet out, the workbook out, you send it to me. I'll give you 1 hour of my time on the phone to go over that worksheet with you and make sure you did it right and explain all the numbers that you may not understand. Now that's a big bonus.
It is a bonus because getting that from a coach or anybody is not cheap.
No. And I'm not, Mr. Numbers. I struggled with that. It took me a long time to get good at numbers. So I understand The spreadsheet seems overwhelming, but it's not really. If you just plug the numbers in right, it does all the math for you. And I'll be more than happy to make sure you do things right, because I get this phone call all the time. Hey, Malin, something's wrong with your spreadsheet. It says I should only be charging $40 an hour, and I'm charging $80 an hour, and I still don't have any money. What's your effective labor rate? $30 an hour.
Yeah,
Because
so
they don't
yeah,
understand
yep.
the correlation between all the numbers. And again, the P&Ls are wrong usually. So we got to get stuff in the right spots and fully understand your numbers. So that's the power of that class. And
I think that was a class that you said, I want to do this one, because
yes,
your seminar book was full of a ton of great classes. And
well,
I think I'd mentioned 2 other ones, and you were like, no, I want to do these 2.
right. Well, what I'm trying to do is give something where, for example, if they take this spreadsheet and they go, okay, I want to go to Tools 2024, and it's going to cost me, let's just use an easy to figure number, $12,000 for me to take my crew, not just their wages and their room and getting them there, but I'm going to lose, because I'm going to close a day, what I would lose in parts and labor sales. We put that into that $12,000, right? So it's wages, lost sales, everything. When we fill out the spreadsheet under expenses, we put Tools 2024, we put $12,000, and it adds $1,000 a month to our overhead. So if we charge the correct amount of money, we're actually paying for next year's event throughout the rest of this year and into the next year.
Call that a win number.
Yes. So now we eliminate the excuse of I can't afford to go. And the smart ones will every month take that, let's say $1,000, and take it out and put it in a savings account. And if they
Make a
don't want to do
special
it,
account called training.
right. And if they don't want to do $1,000, do $250. It's an easier number, right? And just what I tell people is make it an automatic deposit out of your checking account into your savings account.
Yep.
That way, when it's time for Tools, you don't have to go, I don't know if I can afford to do this, or worse, put it on your credit cards, because that costs you money. So we're going to also talk about reducing debt and how to do that, not have any credit card debt. We're going to talk about saving money. So we talk about 3 savings accounts and budgeting for these. A savings account with what I call liquid money. That's money you can touch right away. So if something happens, the roof starts to leak, the wind blows a door down, we have instant money to fix it without going in debt. Then we have what I call a capital account. This is money that we might want to, with the help of a financial planner, invest so it grows. That's for buying the building down the road, or modifying our building, right?
Right.
And then we're going to have a retirement account, first for the owner, and then for their key personnel, your manager. Because how do we get these people to stay with us if we don't give them a reason to stay with us? So we talk about budgeting for this, making this a line item expense. Not I'm going to save after I pay all my bills. It's part of our bills. So it becomes just like rent does. And we're going to talk about the WAG method of setting your hourly rate. So if I came in and I opened a shop across the street from yours, my daily cost to run that business will be higher than yours. Why?
Newer business, you're just getting established. Things are a lot higher when that other business was already sitting there.
Right. And you've been there for a while, so your rent may be less, or you own the building, or your mortgage is less. I'm going to come in and pay a lot more money. So if I called you and said, Brett, what do you charge per hour? I'm going to be losing money.
$1.
Right. Well, I tell people all the time, there's 2 ways of handling that. If you know it's another repair shop calling you, you can lowball them. But see, I'm the other way. I tell them it's $290 an hour, on the off chance that they're going to raise their rate some and get closer to what's reality.
Right. Right.
Because right now they wagged it. So any increase in price will be beneficial to not just them, but to our industry.
I know when the business was kind of handed over to my brother and I, we argued about how to run the business. And I'm like, he's like, well, let's just give everybody a raise. We're going to raise the shop rate. That's not how that works. You got to figure out the shop rates you can afford to pay them.
Right.
And until I started getting training and coaching and everything else and going to these classes, learn the, the KPIs, learning how to read a P&L and get everything set up, learning my effective labor rate, I'm a lot better off than what I was.
And not just learn it, but our clients, we give our clients a weekly spreadsheet. So they put each week in, and it tells you what your effective labor rate was for that week.
Yep.
It tells you what your gross profit was for parts that week, and what your productivity was, and what your parts profit is. And I'll be more than happy to share that with anybody who wants that also. So a lot of people know their numbers, but they don't check them often enough. And here's our problem. We're already in, well, it's the 8th month, right? We just started August.
Yeah. August, where did this year go?
I tell you, it should be like January still. But they made the same mistake for the last 8 months and they never caught it. So they've perpetuated the mistake, right? Well, if you look at them weekly, you can fix it from one week to the next week and you'll lose less money.
Yep.
And that's why I get excited about this. The other really great numbers classes, we have a class called Process and Procedure and How They Affect KPIs, Key Performance Indicators. But if you don't understand your hourly rate, effective labor rate, that class will not make as much sense to you.
Yep.
So,
and this is mainly for an owner. And would you recommend a service advisor, a manager, anybody?
Well, it's actually for anybody that runs the business.
Okay.
And here's why. Because your service writer is 100% responsible for gross profit. Most of them don't even know what it is. So managers, owners, anybody that's running the shop, if you will, and ultimately as owners, what we should be doing is building a business that does not need us to be there.
Absentee ownership.
Right. So they need to understand the numbers as good as you do. So it's anybody that maybe in your business, Brett, that you want to have knowledge of the numbers so you don't have to be at work every day. Okay. So service writers, managers, definitely if there's 2 owners, both of them should be here. It's an eye-opening class.
Sounds like it. And unfortunately, I'm going to be busy doing the show, so I'm not going to pop in and, see what's going on, but I wish I could sit through the whole thing.
Well, what's funny is when I was writing service, right, by default, and I started going to these classes, the founder of ESI, Jim Hunt, I went to this class and I was speechless because it was really my first introduction to deep dive into numbers, right? And I went back and the owner didn't go to the class, but he gave me the P&L. So I went back and I figured all this and I went back and I said, hey, we need to raise the hourly rate. He said, nope, can't do that. Why? We're going to lose all our customers. We can't charge more than we're charging, right? Very typical response. And so I don't recommend this, by the way, but this is the way I handle it. I just wrote every estimate after that at the higher rate that I wanted to charge. I did tell him I couldn't change the things in the computer system, right? The CAN jobs, but every estimate I wrote at the higher numbers. And 2 months after I started doing that, he comes to me and goes, what are you doing differently? I said, nothing. I wasn't going to admit to it, right? Nothing. He goes, nope, you're doing something wrong, different. And I said, why do you think I'm doing something different? He goes, because there's more money in the bank. Okay. Remember when we talked about the hourly rate? We needed to raise it. Yeah, I did that. And he goes, you what? I said, I raise it. Every estimate I've written since we talked, I've sold it at the higher hourly rate. He goes, huh? Because we didn't lose any customers.
No.
But what we did do is made more money.
Yep. The only customers you're going to lose are the ones that are calling and say, hey, what's your hourly rate? And they're not your customers.
Right. And you shouldn't tell them.
Nope. I said, depends on what your job is.
Right. But here's the most important part, Brett. And, I live in the most litigated state in the world. So we have lots of rules about this. But we don't really charge by the hour. Because if you think about it, we have this fictional number we call our hourly rate. But let's say that I think this alternator should pay an hour. So I give you an estimate of the price of the alternator plus 1 hour's worth of labor. But because I'm skilled and I have the tools, I do it in a half an hour. Does anybody lower the price?
You shouldn't.
No. So you're not really charging by the hour. That's the charging by the job, right?
Charging by the job.
But if you tell people you're charging by the hour and you don't lower that price, you've actually committed fraud.
Yep. And the only ones that'll know that is if they're sitting in your waiting room and you get it done in a half an hour and they're only there a half hour and you build it for an hour. But they
Right.
won't know because I don't put my hours on there.
Right.
This is what the
But
job cost.
the reason this is such a big deal because it cost a shop in California close to $2 million.
I think I read that.
It was actually a dealership. That very example of an alternator. What they didn't know was the guys whose car it was sitting in the waiting room. He asked, "They've only worked on my car half an hour. Don't you need to lower that price?" Of course, the cashier said, "No, this is the price." Well, he was the deputy district attorney for the county, and he filed a class action lawsuit. Not only did they have to refund his money, but they had to go back 5 years.
Oh my God.
And they were punching in and off of the jobs, using a job ticket. So they had to have an accounting firm audit every repair order for 5 years and refund everybody. And the people they couldn't get a hold of, they had to put it in escrow for a number of years.
Ooh.
So what we're used to doing in the old days, the good old days, right? We have to be very careful about now. So the thing we'll talk about is when somebody says, "What's your hourly rate?" It should always be, we don't charge by the hour. We charge by the job based upon our inspection by our technicians.
Yep.
And that way, do you pay a doctor by the hour?
No, you pay him for the visit.
Well, more importantly, what do you really pay a doctor for?
His evaluation.
You're paying him for knowledge, right?
Yep.
To know what to do, what not to do. We don't get paid for this. We get paid for this.
Yeah, and that's the downside to the industry is the general consumer cannot get past the old school way of thinking.
Right. And they can go online and find out how many hours that job's supposed to be. There's websites out there that'll give you average hourly rate for your area. I mean, those are killing us.
Yeah, they
Because,
are. Yep.
Brett, when you hire a really sharp technician that can do everything, he doesn't work for minimum wage.
No.
And
They want top
that's
dollar.
right. That's the other
You should
thing.
pay him top dollar.
The other thing is I'm a big advocate of upwards of 5 different labor rates.
I think I got 4.
So if you come in with a smog failure or drivability complaint, that's the A rate. That's going to be the highest charge.
Yep.
And
Because you
if
got
I'm
no
going
parts
to do
to sell.
well, and we don't sell parts with that typically.
Nope.
But let's say that they come in for an oil change, then I can do that at the lower rate. And that's something we actually talk a lot about in our service advisor school about multiple labor rates and multiple skill levels. And that's what, if you think about it, that's what a doctor does. If you see your GP, he charges one thing. If you see a cardiologist or a neurologist, you're going to pay a lot more.
$1 for that. Yep.
Yeah, because you're paying for their knowledge. And let me tell you, they're not any smarter than our guys are.
No, our guys are actually doctors of cars. And
Right.
And we got to constantly keep up with this technology that's out there, the electric cars, the autonomous, the ADAS.
Right.
And that takes training.
Well,
it
and
takes investment.
think about, I think the last time I looked at between makes and models, there's something like 170 different makes and models.
Yep.
With human beings, there's only 2, innies and outies, right? And that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed in hundreds of years. Cars are changing weekly.
Yeah, it's
So we have never professed to be professionals and get paid for our brains, and
Nope.
we need to stop that. So we're going to talk about that in the financial planning class about multiple labor rates and understanding your numbers to the point where you can make good financial decisions. So one of the things that I tell people is we talked about budgeting for tools next year, right? But let's say that you have 3 scanners and you need to update them all. So let's just say that's 12 grand. We should put that in our budget for this year. So every hour we bill from now to 2024 is helping us afford to update those scanners.
Yep.
Oh, we need to buy an alignment machine, right? We're going to put a new alignment machine in. Those are cheap, $45,000, $50,000.
And then you had the ADAS on top of that.
Right. And exactly. It's funny because people go, I want to go into ADAS business. When did you decide that? Today? Well, we should have thought about it at the beginning of 2023, and we could have been charging a little bit more. So you don't have to do the math right now. But if you took all the hours your shop billed in 2023 and had $1 more for every one of those hours, it would be a pretty significant number at the end of
Yes,
the
it
year,
would.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
We could buy a lot of updates. We could take better care of our employees, right?
That's the key. And speaking of employees, your second class has to kind of do with that.
Yes. Well, when the pandemic hit and I wasn't traveling anymore, I was literally in Oklahoma on Saturday. I flew home on Saturday. On Sunday morning, they locked the country down. I was in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. I was just thankful I got home.
Wow.
It's a great community, not very big though. I didn't leave my house to travel for 18 months. So while I was at home doing all the things that I don't normally get to do, I spent a lot of time helping people hire people. So I said, let's write a book about hiring people, which, by the way, I don't recommend. It's a real pain. But we produced a book called The Joy of Hiring. And it's
There's
going to
joy
be
in that.
oh, well, first of all, you got to understand my sarcastic personality.
Okay, I'm
So,
sorry to interrupt. I just like,
no,
okay,
no.
there's joy in that.
A client that knows me pretty well bought the book and he goes, there's no real joy in hiring. I said, so you get it, huh? And he goes, oh, yeah, you're a bit of a smart ass. It was like, really, you know me this well, and it just now dawns on you that it's kind of a sarcastic way of, feeling the pain. And it's all about doing a better job of hiring people. So in the hiring class, we're going to talk about everything from the kind of ads you run, because there's some of the ads I see are just horrible, just horrible. So we're going to talk about the ad being a funnel and the size of the funnel. Whether you have a very narrow funnel, you don't get any applicants, or you have such a big funnel, everybody applies for the job that's not qualified. We're going to talk about the interview process and how to do a better job. We're going to talk about not to hire emotionally or out of desperation.
Right.
So
Always be recruiting.
And we're going to talk about that. You should be running an ad every single day for every position in your business. And I'm going to give you a teaser, right? Always be looking to replace your weakest link. We're going to talk a lot about that. I don't care if you got the best crew in the world. You should be recruiting for replace the weakest person in your list. I will have the book both in our booth and at the class at a reduced rate. You could buy it on Amazon if you want to, but then Bezos gets a big chunk of that. So if you buy it directly from me, it'll save you a little bit of money. And Bezos,
And you get the chunk of it.
Well, it's not that much of it, but Bezos, I don't think needs more money.
No, he does not.
So the other thing that I do typically when I do a class, and I've done this at Tools before, is everybody that attends one of my classes gets my cell phone number. So you can text me. I don't typically answer my cell phone because I'm always on it. But if you text me, you say, hey, I met you at Tools this morning, to be a perfectly example of this. I had a gentleman. He emailed me. He started his email with, hey, I attended your classes last year at Tools. I have a couple questions. When can we talk?
That's great.
So that was a year ago. So, and I have already emailed him and said, you tell me when you're available. I'm in my office for the next 2 or 3 days.
You can tell him you can talk October 20th to the 22nd at the Kalahari.
I already told him I'm going to be there. And the other thing, for example, last year at the end of one of the classes, somebody I won't mention his name, actually had questions. And we sat after the class was over for almost 2 hours. I sat with him and answered all of his questions he had.
Wow.
And I'll be honest with you, there's not many people that'll do that.
No,
but
not when your time's valuable and everybody else's time is valuable, and we're constrained to a certain time limit. But that's great.
But I want to help the industry. I'm not concerned about me. I won't sell you my services. I'll tell you what I do. If you're interested, great. But I want the industry to get better because I see the suffering our industry goes through because we're not charging enough. We're not getting the respect we should. What we do is very difficult. And we need to get paid better for it. We need to pay our employees better for it. Shop owners need to take a paycheck. A
Yep.
lot of shop owners don't take a paycheck. In
You know, and
fact,
with that being said, Malin, the next generation, that younger generation, it's getting hard to find and hire replacement people. So we have to do a better job at that.
right. Well, and there's a couple of reasons. I was in Canada last September, and a shop owner came to me and he goes, "Hey, Malin, I dodged a bullet. Tell me about it, because I'm interested." Well, it sounded like it was this, major thing. He goes, "I talked my son out of going into business." And I went, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, my son wanted to take over and run the shop and stuff, and I told him no, he didn't want to do that." So,
Why?
we got a problem when our own industry doesn't want their children to come into it, right? Because it was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and he never made any money at it. But that was his fault because he didn't attend classes. He didn't set his rate properly. He didn't charge for his knowledge. He let people go, "Oh, come on, do me a favor, man." I mean, you hear that, Brett, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Hey, can I make payments? And no, I got
Well,
financing options for that.
what's funny is I tell people all the time, shop owners, I said, "So the guy, I got problems. I got this. I got this. Can I give you a little bit now and a little bit here?" I said, "Does your landlord let you do that? Does the power company let you do that?"
No.
No.
How
Then
about
you
the
shouldn't
insurance
do it.
companies?
Right. So, these are the things that we have fought, that I have fought, the whole time I've been in the industry. And I've really been in this industry since I was 16 years old. And, you know, it's changed a great deal, but business is business. And the things we're going to talk about in financial structuring apply to every business. Got to
Yes.
understand your numbers, got to understand how to charge properly. And here's my sickness. See, I go places, the local donut shop, right? And I stand there and I watch the people come and go. And I think, what is their average repair order, right? Their average sale. In a donut shop, it's not very much. What is it, $3 or $4, $5? How many people do they need to have come in every day and buy the average just to pay the rent?
Yeah.
And when my kids were younger and they traveled with us, would be at a restaurant, I'd do this. I go, "How many seats do you think are in this restaurant? What do you think the average sale is?"
And you got to
Do the
have
math.
that times per seat.
Right. And how many times a day can they turn the seat? So figuring they turn every table or every seat once an hour, that's pretty common. So we were in Las Vegas, my son and I, 2,200 seats in this restaurant. It was 2 stories tall, 2,200 seats for him and I to have lunch, no alcohol, just lunch, $50.
Yeah.
So 2,200 times 50 times 8 for 8 times a day they turn those. And my son, I made him do the math and he goes, "Wow, that's a lot of money." I said, "Wait, now you got the expense of the employees, food waste, rent, all of those things." There's a restaurant in Las Vegas that 15 years ago, I asked them what their rent was. It's on the strip. It's a restaurant on the strip in Vegas. It was $185,000 a month.
A month. Ouch. You got to turn them seats over a lot.
Well, they actually had more than one profit center because they have a souvenir store.
Okay.
So they had the restaurant and they had a souvenir store. And the souvenir store does pretty well. But that's where you got to understand the numbers. And that's why I ask those questions. I do that to every business I go into. It drives people crazy. But
And
most
you're
shop
not a
owners,
numbers guy.
no, it's been doing this for so long, right? I mean, a lot of these numbers I can't do in my head. I've had a guy work for me that could do all the math in his head. I can't do that.
Yeah. I mean, some of the numbers that you got to look at, how much per hour, your gross profit per hour.
Right.
How many hours can you turn on that lift? Kind of like the seats in the restaurant.
Right.
And that's how
And
you figure it out. And if you don't know them, that's going back to old school way of thinking, and your business is not going to survive.
right. And the other side of this numbers game is if eventually you want to sell the business and you don't have a solid set of numbers, it's not as valuable because whoever buys that business wants you to prove it made money, right?
Correct.
So for those people who are not reporting all their income, that's going to hurt them when they go to sell the business because you can't prove it.
Yep. So, training has always been at the forefront of me, and I'm not afraid to invest in my staff. I'm not afraid to look and promote that to get the next staff in, the next person in my staff, and show them that, hey, I'm building you up. How important do you feel training and going to events like Tools and all the other ones around the country? It's almost like you said, you need to a budget for it, and say you cannot afford it. You can't afford not to go.
Right. In my opinion, our businesses are like sharks. And the unique thing about a shark is if it's not moving, it's dying. Our business is the same way. If we're not moving forward in our business, we're deteriorating, we're dying. Some of it's a slow death. So knowledge to me is that shark swimming. But there is a statement out there that says knowledge is power. That's not true. Implementation of knowledge is power. So if you go to Tools and everybody takes Copus notes, right?
Yep.
And one of two things happen. They go home, they put them on the shelf, they never touch them again. Or worse, they go back to the shop and they try to change 90 things and everything falls apart.
Yep. That was early on when I first started going to training. I'd come back with all his ideas and I was all gung ho and trying to put everything in place. And guess what? Everything fell apart.
What's funny, Brett, is when your guys said, oh, Brett's going to training this weekend, they actually start a pool that says how long with the ideas he comes back with work. Right. So one guy says Tuesday at noon. One guy says Wednesday at 4:00. Right. Somebody wins that money.
Yeah.
Because you try to implement too much and then you fall back to the comfort zone, which is the old way of doing things. And that's why you don't get buy-in from your employees. So one of the things that I talk about is make that knowledge powerful. So pick one or two things, only one or two things.
Yep.
Make that priorities, go back and implement that. We do a class called Excellence as a Habit, and we talk about habits. And we talk about, the average person out there says it takes 10 days to change a habit. That's not necessarily true, but it's a good focal point. So if you don't make that work for 10 days and get through the uncomfortable part, all you've done is screw with everybody's minds.
Yep.
So pick one or two things that'll make the greatest impact. Go back and do that, and then go to number 2, then number 3. So all those notes, you should sit down after the event and go, this is the highest priority, this is the second highest, and number them, and then work down them. So I think training, we do a good job of technical training because we understand how fast business is training. And all of you shop owners who are going to technical training and you're not being technicians, that's a wrong place for you.
Yeah. You got to learn to work on the business, not in the business.
Right. And what's funny is in management training, what I typically do, I get the wives. The men go to the technical training, right? The wife comes home and says, we're going to do this. And the husband says, we can't do that. We've never done that before. We're not going to do it now. So nothing happens. Instead of them both being in the class and being partners and saying, can we raise the hourly rate? Should we raise the hourly rate? The numbers say we have to raise it. So we must do it. Let's go back and do that on Monday morning.
And guess what? Your customer base ain't going to really notice a difference.
Not unless you tell them.
Yep. This is what the job cost you. This is what it's going to cost me to repair your vehicle. Is it a yes or no?
Right. And you have to build value with money. So this is what it's going to cost for us to do this. This is our great warranty.
Yep.
And we've been here for 50 years. So, we're going to be here for a long time. And, when I was writing service, I used to tell people this, and people laugh at me for this. I used to say one of the best parts about coming here is you get to talk to me. And that's the reaction I get. And I said, the reason why that's important is because I actually care about you.
Yep.
And I'm going to take good care of you because I want you to be a lifetime customer of our shop.
My customers used to like to talk to me. Now they like to talk to Colleen or Emma, my service advisor or front desk person.
Right. That's perfect.
Yep.
Because the longer they want you, the less valuable the business is.
And there's still a few old customers that will not talk to them either by in person or on the phone. And when I get to talk to them and I know what they want to do, I'm like, let me turn you back over to Emma or Colleen. They can handle the situation.
Right. And that's what I advise clients to do. Talk to them. And when they say, oh, it's this, say, hang on just a minute. She can handle that for you. Let me have you do this. So, to me, and it's not just because training is what I do. I was this way before I was a trainer. I went to everything I could get my hands on. Even when I first got married, long time ago, um, my wife ran a dental office. And so she went to some dental training. She hated it, right? She was the kind of person that said, I don't need to go to this. But I would go with her and I'd go to the classes. And if you took everywhere that guy said dental practice and you put automotive repair, it worked.
Uh,
So I
again,
go,
it's not just industry related. This is
no, right.
business
And
related.
I would be taking notes. And my wife would say, what are you doing? This is interesting. I think I could take part of this back and use it at the shop. And she'd just go, you're crazy. But see, it's a mindset, right? Training is a
Yep.
mindset. Have you ever met somebody who says, I went to that training, didn't learn a thing?
Oh yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that before.
And we blame the trainer. It wasn't. It was that person's mindset when they walked in the room. So there's two mindsets. My mindset is I'm going to learn something new. I drove both of my kids crazy with the mantra of try to learn something new every day.
Yep.
So I go to training with that mindset. If I go to training and say, I'm not going to learn anything, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when I sit in other classes, I sit in some technical training classes just so I can kind of understand some of the new lingo. And Lord knows I'm dangerous with tools now, even though I used to do this. But I like to be able to talk about the complexity of the cars. So I sit in a lot of technical training, you know, and from time to time I'll sit in other management training. Usually I know the instructor, so I don't want to cause any conflicts. I always ask if I can do that. But I try to learn something new every day. I have about 27, 28 books on my phone right now that I need to listen to. Book title comes up, I buy it. I'll listen to it when I get a chance.
That was my biggest problem with my first coach. You know, you got to read this book or Audible it, and I'm like, I haven't read a book since Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Good book.
Yeah, no, but that's going back to intermediate school.
Yeah, I get you. I get you. Well, and you know, I actually have a recommended book list that I'll be more than happy to share with anybody. And everything on that list is available in Audible. It's really hard for me to read now. You know, a couple of years ago, I did a class about my stroke and motorcycle accident, and it affected my eyes, so it's hard for me to read. So I listen to books. And Zig Ziglar coined the phrase "automobile university." And if you have a half-hour drive to work, you can do a book a week, and that hour round trip.
Yeah,
So
I
you're
know
not
he's
really,
got a lot of stuff out, and he's definitely
yeah,
worth listening to or reading. So
yeah. Well, there's some great stuff out there, and my book list is kind of eclectic because it covers all kinds of. It's not just business, certainly not just automotive stuff. There's leadership, there's philosophy in some cases. Um,
and you
you know,
kind of got to be that as a business owner. It's just like it's not just an automotive business. You you got to be able to communicate with your staff, your customers, other shops, your vendors and suppliers.
right?
You have to know it all. You
And you
got to wear many hats.
and you almost got to be a psychologist.
Oh, good Lord. So I don't need somebody to try and get in my head.
No, no. Sometimes you got to get in their heads,
I know that.
right? Got to figure out what motivates them. It's funny because I told a client, a customer at the shop one time, I said, you know, I'm going to put a couch in the waiting room. And they go, why? I said, so you can lay down on it and tell me all about your problems because
And
it's
I'm
not
going to
always
charge
about the
by the
car.
job, not by the hour.
Yeah. Well, for some people, that would be a very big bill because the job is very steep, right?
Hey,
But
man, and I appreciate this taking the opportunity to sit down here and talk with me. Tell us a little
absolutely.
bit about what your ESI is all about. It's not just going into training events. You do other stuff on the side as well.
Yes. So, you know, I do a lot of training, a lot of teaching. I speak a lot. That's my favorite place to be other than writing service. So we do that. We are one of the few companies that will come and spend time on site in your business and train in person or, you know, evaluate your shop. We do phone coaching once a week, phone calls an hour at a time. We'll do just one-off consulting. I have a lot of people call me and say, I want to sell my business. I need your help to get it prepared to sell. And my typical answer to that is we need 5 years because they haven't done all the things they need to do. So we do that. I'm an author. Like I said, I wrote The Joy of Hiring. You're going to like this second book better. The Joy of Auto Repair.
Oh
How to
boy.
make money and have fun running an automotive repair shop. So
And it's a very rewarding industry, but you got to put forth the effort and
right,
be open to training and getting better every day.
right. And that book's not finished yet. The lady that helps me with that and edits it, I have 2 editors. She just had a baby, so for some reason the baby's more important than my book. I don't get it.
She doesn't see the joy in automotive repair.
No, she does. She was actually at the show last year. This
Okay.
lady, she lives close by, so I got to get my dig in when I can. So we're trying to get that out by the end of the year, and that's going to be kind of like an encyclopedia. It's not going to be a read from front to back. If you need help with financial structuring, what we talked about, that section's there. If you need help hiring, that section's there. If you need help with sales, that section's there. So it's not a read it book. It's I need help here. Here's a chapter on it. And the
Okay.
last time I talked to her, it was 40 chapters right now. It's going to be a pretty good sized book. So again, I don't recommend that because it takes a crazy amount of work. Um, I do a fair number of podcasts. I know that we have changing the industry is going to be at Tools. I've been on there
Yes.
several times. In fact, I was in their podcast last time at the Tools event. I just did a couple things for Carm Copyauto on Remarkable Results Radio. I've done some stuff for ASA, but I do pretty much everything to do with the business side of automotive repair.
That's
And
great.
we have a little catalog of classes. It's 22 pages. So there's something in there for everybody. And every year I write 2 or 3 brand new classes. So that's what I'm in the process now of getting 2024's new classes dialed in.
Good.
Because I don't like teaching the same thing every year, and our industry changes. So we've got to stay up on that.
How can they get a hold of you?
The easiest way to get a hold of me is via my email address, which is Maylan, MAYLAN, at E as in Edward, S as in Sam, I as in ink, seminars.com. The
Okay.
other thing you can do is if you Google my name, Maylan Newton, there's all kinds of stuff on there, stuff I've recorded for other events and YouTube and stuff, plus articles I've written for different magazines. I was a contributing editor for 20 plus years for Import Auto Parts and Accessories before they closed their doors. So there's a lot of written stuff out there. So you can find a lot of stuff about my background and
That's
stuff
good.
I've done.
I know we're looking forward to having you up there at the Kalahari. Again, it's October 20th to 22nd. Kalahari Resorts in the Poconos. So if you've never been to the Poconos in the fall, it is absolutely beautiful to begin
It
there.
is. It's gorgeous.
My word is, as a business owner, invest in your staff. Bring them and their families to the event. Get registered now. We do have an early bird discount only till the end of the month. That is online at AASP pa.org/tools. You can get in there and get registered and get signed up for Malin's classes.
And if you want to talk, find me there. We have a booth. Find myself or young lady named Birdie will be in my booth when I'm not in it. And if you need to talk, I'll schedule time to talk, or you can stay after class. Like I said, I'm more than willing to invest the time in you because I want you to invest the time in your business to become better at this, because our industry needs to do something now.
Yes,
Because it's getting harder and harder to be in this business.
it is. So, Malin, again, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I'm looking forward to see you in October. If I don't see you before, I'm pretty sure I'll see you down at AST in September, though.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we're going to be at a couple different shows. Like I told you, we're going to be a little busy in the month of
Yep.
Tools.
Yep.
I'll just throw this out there. I'm going to be at Apex. I'm speaking at Apex. So if for whatever reason you can't make Tools and you go to Apex, we have a booth there. Come look me up. I do 1 or 2 classes there also. So
Good.
Come by, introduce yourself. Even if you just want to introduce yourself, come by. And it's really, Brett, I want the association to be as successful as possible because that's the backbone of our industry. And you
Right.
guys do so much good in bringing training and benefits of like insurances and processors and all of that stuff. So all of you listening to this and all of you attending this, see the benefit of what the association does for you, because let me tell you, the industry would be a lot harder without the associations.
Without an association, we've mentioned this a ton of times, and as we're recording this, I'm going to be recording with two of my local legislators here this week and putting that out legislatively. But many voices make a louder scream than one guy going up there.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to get into it now, but the other reason that we have a shortage of technicians is there's no young people coming into our field. And if anybody wants to talk to me about that, because I speak at a lot of schools and do career fairs and those kind of things at schools to push our industry forward. I'm also part of what's called Skills USA. It's a skilled workers group for youth. If you're not involved with it and you're interested, let me know. I sit on the board of directors for Skills California. And we have, just in California, we have 45,000 young people trying to get into the skills.
Wow,
And
that's a lot.
Nobody from the automotive world is attending these events and doing this stuff because they don't know it exists. So if you want technicians in the future, we got to get the young people starting at junior high, speak at your schools, be on the board advisors for your colleges, your high schools, your elementary school, any place that has a STEM program or skills type programs, be involved. But if you need help with that, reach out to me. I can put you in touch with the people. Every state has a skills chapter.
Okay.
So
I'm going to put that stuff in there and make sure that information gets out. So, all right, Malin, I'm going to go ahead.
My email address in the comments or wherever you want. But thank you, Brett, for having me on and letting me ramble on.
No,
But, I'm pretty passionate about our industry, if you couldn't tell it.
I can see that. And I've talked to you before and I've been in your classes. You are passionate about this. And again, I appreciate it. We'll see you in October.